But now that we've gone through the predictions for the rest of the season, let's move into last round. Now, last round we had some really close games, a couple of upsets as well. It was a really good round of footy, and we start with the Thursday night game between the Swans and the Bulldogs. Sydney held on, finally in a close one, and it's almost shot the Bulldogs' final spot. I think, like I said, they make it, but the Bulldogs got to find some form. They couldn't kick a goal. They already had Aaron Norton for the majority of the match, and I think if they were playing a better team, the Bulldogs, they would have been beaten by a lot more. They were very lucky that they were playing Sydney, who have been very underperforming all year, and at this stage, I think the Bulldogs are only going to be making up the numbers if they make the finals this year. But nonetheless, we get to the votes. 3-2-1 votes. 3 votes go to Marcus Bontempelli, 2 votes to Errol Goulden, and the 1 vote to Tom Papley. Now, this was a big contentious one. My brother actually sent me some tips, and he thought that Errol Goulden was better, and I almost put him there, but I just gave it to Bontempelli because I think he played the four quarters. Errol Goulden kind of fell off in the last quarter, but I mean, to his credit, Sydney did win, so I mean, he didn't really play that well. But I think Bontempelli all match was the reason that the Bulldogs were still in this game. He had him on their back for the all game, and he just couldn't get him over the line at the end. So that's why I gave him the 3 votes. Errol Goulden, like I said, was brilliant. I think he's almost got that All-Australian wingman spot locked up now. It's going to be a real contentious one if they actually pick wingman this year. But if they do, I think Errol Goulden's right up there with people like Ed Langdon, Lockie Hunter, Josh Dacos, and I'm forgetting one, Nick Martin. So I think he's a real chance there. And the 1 vote to Tom Papley, kicked 4 goals. He was the fire starter for Sydney. When he plays well for Sydney this year, they look so much better. We saw him obviously way back in Gather Round when he kicked 6 goals. He was really, he was just amazing in that game. And it almost looked like they could start Sydney's season, but I don't know if he's injured or something, but that just really cost Sydney in the end his form throughout the rest of the year. But yeah, that was the votes for that one. Next we get to Melbourne versus Brisbane. I don't know what Brisbane done here. They had this game locked up with 7 minutes to go, and they cost a 4-goal lead and gave Melbourne the win. People can say that Eric Hipwood took that mark, but honestly, I think it would have been a quarter ball up anyway. I think it was pretty much both players had handled the ball, and also you shouldn't be giving up a 4-goal lead with 7 minutes to go. That was poor from Brisbane. They finally had a game at the MCG where they should win, and they shot themselves in the foot. It was really quite embarrassing, really, from Brisbane. But anyway, the 3-2-1 votes. This was a close one, but I did give Max Gawn the 3 votes, 2 votes to Christian Petrarca, and the 1 vote to Joe Danaher. Max Gawn got it for me because this is the Max Gawn that the Melbourne Demons want to see. They don't want to see him up forward. I think that Max Gawn is actually a pretty capable forward, but this is what his role is. He's a sole ruckman. I don't know what they're going to do at Brody Grundy. We'll get into that maybe. No, you know what? Brody Grundy, if he decides to leave, that's a real weak act, in my opinion. If he wants to leave after 1 year instead of trying to fight for his spot back in the Melbourne lineup, I think that's pretty weak. He had a chance to go to a club that didn't have a ruckman, but he decided to go to Melbourne, which, I mean, I don't know why he did to begin with if he didn't want to fight for it. But we'll have to see what happens with that. I still think that Max Gawn was brilliant in this game. He was all around the ground, and it was just what Melbourne wanted him to be for the rest of his career, probably. After that, we get to Christian Petrarca with the 2 votes. He was very good as well. He's kicking goals now, which I think is one of the reasons why he's a chance for he could be a chance for a Brownlow. If it wasn't for Nick Dacos, I think he's right up there. But Christian Petrarca has been brilliant, especially the last few weeks. Even against St Kilda last week, he was very close to get votes in that game. But yeah, he was brilliant in that one. And the 1 vote I did give to Joe Danaher. However, he probably could have got the win for him if he kicked straight. He kicked 2 goal 3, and it just costs him at stages with Joe. He can be one of the best players in the game at times, and sometimes he can be the most useless player on the field. And I don't think it's ever going to change with his career. I mean, everyone's been wanting him to do that for his whole career. You know, you need to make your bad game still reasonable, but he's still got these highs and his huge lows. So I don't know what Joe Danaher's going to do. He was brilliant in that game and almost got the Lions over the line, but if he kicked straight, he would have got him there. So wasn't good enough from Joe for him for a lot of games this season, but this game he nearly got him over the line. So you got to give him credit for that. Hopefully they get Josh Dunkley back soon, the Lions, and that should help them towards their finals push. But yeah, that's for that game. After that, we get to the Pies versus the Dockers, and honestly, this game was just the second quarter. When the Pies knocked on 10 goals in the quarter, that was basically a game done. They did very well, the Pies, in this one. I don't think Fremantle could have done much better, honestly. I wasn't expecting much from the Dockers, and I think now, honestly, my ladder predictor says they've got on 10 wins, and that's a lot of them because they're at home. But they're in a real hole, Fremantle. They had that 4-week or 5-week burst in the middle of the season when they beat Sydney and they beat Melbourne. But since then, they've been really poor. Now, they get Sarong back this week, so maybe they'll be a little bit better in the midfield against the Swans. But other than that, they've been pretty poor, Fremantle. But nonetheless, let's get to the votes. 3-2-1 votes. 3 votes went to Taylor Adams, 2 votes to Nick Dacos, and the 1 vote to Jamie Elliott. Nick Dacos is very close here, but I gave it to Taylor Adams because I think he was there when the game was there to be won. Nick Dacos definitely racked them up towards the end of the game as well, but Taylor Adams was very good in especially in the first half, and was pretty good in the second half. He kicked a few goals as well, and I do think that a midfielder who kicks goals is a lot more valuable than 35 touches, so that's why I gave him the 3 votes. But nonetheless, Nick Dacos is in some brilliant form. I don't know if there's been a player in the second year that's won the Brownlow Award that's been 19 years of age in a very long time. So I think Nick Dacos has almost got that wrapped up at this stage. He's very close to it in the Boundary Riders medal as well, by the way, guys, if anyone's really interested. Actually, speaking of that, we probably won't be doing many more vote segments on this for the next, probably from round 21 on to round 24, just so we make a little bit of surprise when we do the countdown at the end of the season. Probably, I can't remember if the Brownlow's in the middle of the, I don't think it's in the bye week anymore, is it? I think it's at the end of the season, the grand final week, so that's a little bit unfortunate, but maybe we'll do it in the bye week as well, because that'd be kind of cool. But anyway, back to the votes. And Jamie Elliott got the 1 vote. He's in some really good form at the moment, Jamie Elliott, kicking goals, and he got 4 again against Fremantle. If he can get on a roll as well, Jamie Elliott, towards the end of the season, we saw how valuable he was to Collingwood last year. He hasn't really been to his best until about the last month or so, but if he hits that stride, they've just got another dimension to Collingwood's dangerous team that they've got. So he's really up there now. Jamie Elliott is one of the best small forwards in the game at the moment. I mean, everyone talks about Charlie Cameron, but he's up there, Jamie Elliott. He's a very good player, and I think he's very underrated as well. Considering he's at Collingwood, it's very hard to be underrated there. But anyway, next up we get to the Gold Coast versus St Kilda. We talked a little bit about it before. Our Ross Long was very disappointed by St Kilda, but I mean, no words can say how bad they were. They were very bad. They only kicked 8 goals in the whole game, 2 goals to half-time. The Gold Coast, they responded after the Stuart Dew sacking, which I think was pretty poor from the club, to be fair. But Stephen King gets a win on his first game. 3-2-1 vote. Sam Flanders with the 3, Will Powell with the 2, and Rory Atkins with the 1. Noah Anderson was pretty close here with the vote. I did give it to Rory Atkins, though, because he did have quite a good influence off that half-back wing role. Will Powell's been brilliant in defence all year for the Gold Coast. That's why I think Stuart Dew was a little bit unlucky as well, because whoever gets that job at the Gold Coast, if it's Damien Hardwick or whoever, I think they've just got the list to just get them to a final series very easily. They've got a very good list, the Gold Coast. It's unfortunate that Stuart Dew couldn't get the potential that he could have got out of this club, but I think whoever gets this Gold Coast head coaching role is going to have an assortment of choices to take with this lineup to push him forward. But Sam Flanders was very good in this game, and if he wants to get traded to a different club, he's played some really good footy over the past month, so he's definitely rising his stakes towards maybe moving to a Victorian club at the end of the year. We talked about that in the trade rumours video a couple of weeks ago, so Sam Flanders is definitely a real chance to be moving clubs, and if not, they've got whoever gets that coaching role at the Gold Coast has definitely got a midfielder on their hands, and definitely one up there. Probably not as to the quality or talked about like Rao and Anderson, but he could definitely put some, talking points towards moving to a midfield role for the Gold Coast next year, or for the rest of the season at least. After that, we get to what probably was the upset of the round in Carlton versus Port Adelaide. Carlton beat Port Adelaide by a good margin, 50 points, and this was a very surprising one for a lot of people. However, I'm not exactly 100% surprised about it. I think he even said it in the podcast last week. I think Carlton have a bit of a chance because of their tall forwards. Now, obviously, Harry Mackay went down very early in this game, so it was a little bit surprising that Carlton did get on the board, like 18 goals. But we've got to give some credit, even though he didn't get in the votes, though. I've got to give it to Jesse Motlop, who came in as a late in. He kicked 4 goals in the first half, and really was sparked Carlton up forward, and he was brilliant in the first half for Carlton. And I don't know. It's interesting because people would say that Carlton are back, and it's kind of hard to argue against them now because, I mean, they're beaten second on the ladder and the in-form team of the comp. They were 13 wins, obviously, in a row, Port Adelaide. But you can't really dispute Carlton now. I mean, I had them out of the 8 and 15th, I believe, 6 weeks ago, and now I have them in the 8. So Carlton's percentage, because they beat Port so convincingly, and they've beaten West Coast very well as already in the season by over 100 points, it's hard to have anything against Carlton. I mean, they're a real chance now of making the 8. I don't know if they can really make any damage in the 8 because I just feel like they beat Port, but they beat Port Adelaide at their worst. They had 7 outs. They didn't even have Charlie Dixon or Jason Horne-Francis, who have been very good this year for Port Adelaide. So I give Port Adelaide a mulligan in this game, to be fair, but I've got to give it to Carlton. They were brilliant in this game, and I mean, they ended Port Adelaide's streak, so you got to give them credit for that. And now Port Adelaide's doesn't get much easier with a game against Collingwood this week. But with the 3-2-1 vote, to give the 3 votes to Jack Silvani, 2 votes to Paddy Cripps, and the 1 vote to Dan Houston. Jack Silvani, this is what they want him for. He needs to play forward, and to kick 4 goals in this game, he was very good as well. I don't know if he can keep this form because he just seems to lose it as soon as he gets a good game in. So, I mean, hopefully for Carlton fans, he can hold this sort of form and play brilliantly for the rest of the season. And at this stage, I just don't know what he's just a question mark, I think, all the time. He's always in and out of this team, and I just don't know what they're going to do with him. But hopefully he can hit a good vein of form towards the end of the season. Paddy Cripps, this is the season that he had last year. This is a game that we've finally seen from him this year, that he's played well. I feel like a lot of this season he's been very poor, but he led from the front a lot of times this game and got him. I mean, arguably held his team above Port Adelaide for the majority of the match. I mean, everyone thought that Port would come back, but they just never could. And Paddy Cripps is definitely one of those people who just held Carlton in front for the majority of it. And 1 vote I did give to Dan Houston. He had 41 touches. He was very good in this game, Dan Houston, and has had a very good month. He obviously had that game against Essendon, where he kicked the winner, and he's had a very good month outside of that as well. So I've got to give the 1 vote to Dan Houston, but Port Adelaide, I think, to be fair, I think it was coming. Like, you can't really say it wasn't. They were very close in a lot of games like Essendon, and they were pretty much due for a loss. So I'll give them a little bit of a mulligan. However, if they lose against Collingwood, that's 2 losses in a row, and they don't have the worst end to the season. But at this stage, if they do lose a few more, they could be going into the finals with a very underdone team. They won't have the most amount of confidence going into the finals if they lose a few more, Port Adelaide. But at this stage, I'm giving them a mulligan. I actually picked them against Collingwood this week, which we'll go into a little bit later. But yeah, at this stage, Port Adelaide, I still think are very well up there as second favourites going into the finals if they, keep this sort of form. After that, we get to Geelong versus Essendon. I watched this game live for 3 quarters. I couldn't even do it at the end. It was so poor from Essendon. I kind of agree with Kane Corns. Get him off the ground. Zach Merritt, you've had 200 games. A brilliant player this season, but just get off the ground, bro. You lost by 77 points. Don't fuss around. But anyway, Geelong were very good, but it was down at home. You can't really say too much. I don't get what... Look, I think I said it in the broadcast that they're going to be a bit strong going into finals. You don't want to go up against them. But they're not at their best. I'm sorry. They've beaten Essendon down in Geelong. They beat everyone down in Geelong. Like, it's not that big a deal at this point. They've got to beat some clubs away. And there is 2 games they have this... They have 3 games the rest of the season down in Kardinia Park. And one of them is against Port Adelaide. So they probably win that game. They've got 1 game at Docklands against St Kilda, and then they've got 2 games against Brisbane and Collingwood for the rest of the season. Brisbane is at the Gabba, and that's this week, obviously, and then they've got Collingwood, I think, in round 22 at the MCG. They've got to win those games to prove to me that they're actually a chance this season, because at this stage, they have beaten a lot of clubs around them by a lot. Sorry, a lot of teams below them by a lot, and they're beating teams around them pretty well, but they're not beating the top teams. They've got to play against these top teams to prove to me that they're actually a club that I can consider, worthy of a finals or a premiership berth at this stage. But they were very good in this game. I'm sorry I'm ranting on a little bit. But the 3-2-1 votes, 3 votes Tom Hawkins, 2 votes Brian Myers, and the 1 vote to Tom Atkins. Tom Hawkins, 5 goals. He was always going to dominate against Essendon's defence. They're always just a bit undersized, and I think that's what the Bombers are going to be going for in the off-season. Brian Myers signed a new deal, kicked the first goal of the game, was brilliant in this one, especially when the game was there, sort of to be won after, halfway through the second quarter. This game was gone pretty early. But he was very good. Always the goal assist king. I don't know why Jared Waitley said that he was close to Lionel Messi. I think, bro, relax. I don't even know if he made that tweet. I think there was a whole hullabaloo over Twitter, but who cares, Jared? You're fucking old. Who cares? Shut your mouth. But nonetheless, and Tom Atkins, he's one of my favourite players to watch at the moment. He's brilliant as a defensive runner in the midfield, and I'm surprised he hasn't been in there a little bit earlier. He wasn't there a little bit last year, but he kind of got pushed out towards the end of the season, and he has been good this season, especially over the past 6 weeks for Tom Atkins, so he was good to watch. After that, we get to the GWS versus Adelaide, and I switched this one over on the stream halfway through the third quarter, basically at 3/4 time of the Essendon game. And the Giants looked gone. I thought, the Crows will just, hold this lead pretty well, maybe even increase it at Adelaide Oval towards the end of the match. But the Giants, they are a good team to watch at the moment. If you are an AFL fan, don't have a team to watch, the Giants are up there as a team to watch. They play some good footy. Sam Taylor is one of the best defenders in the comp right now, if not the best. I know Darcy Moore's up there, but he is playing some decent footy. He was very unlucky not to get votes here. And the Crows, I think, shot themselves in the foot. I think they may miss finals off this game. But we get to the votes. 3-2-1. 3 votes to Toby Green, 2 votes to Josh Kelly, and the 1 vote to Jordan Dawson. I'm going to go with Jordan Dawson to talk about first. He was lucky to get these votes. The only reason why I did give it to him because he was the best player for the Crows by far, and he kept them. He was definitely trying to drag them over the line in that last quarter. I feel like he was one of the few players that was. And I think he's been very good as captain this year. He's been one of the better captains, I think, of the season. But he just couldn't get his team over the line, unfortunately. Josh Kelly, 2 votes. He was very good and stood up with the loss of Tom Green on the Friday night, I believe, on the Friday, after the teams came out. So he was very good. And he kicked that goal in the 4th quarter, which was a brilliant finish outside 50. And there were 3 votes to Toby Green. Look, I'm as a Swan supporter, I'm not a big fan of him a lot of times, but I can't sit there and say that he's a poor player. He is very good, and he's been good this year. Taking the responsibility as the captain, I think, has definitely given him a new lease on his AFL career as well. He's not making those stupid mistakes and pushing players and, doing all that shit. He's actually playing his AFL footballer, and he's showing that he's one of the best in the comp. And he may not have had the most amount of disposals or most amount of goals in this game, but his influence in that last quarter and towards the end of the third quarter was brilliant and got his team over the line. So that's why I gave him the 3 votes. After that, we get to Sunday. First game was North Melbourne versus Hawthorn. One for the highlight reels for a lot of years, obviously. But nonetheless, Hawthorn just couldn't kick straight in the first half. They straightened up in the second half and got the win. Have North Melbourne even improved from last year? Have they? I mean, I know Alistair Clarkson's not there to help them, but far out, dude. They are a shocking team. They are, then, look, if West Coast weren't doing so poorly right now, North Melbourne would be talked about a lot more. They are very lucky that West Coast are the biggest basket case we've seen in, 10 years or whatever. But anyway, Hawthorn were quite good. They got James Sicily back, which is always going to help them towards their development in defence. They only conceded 6 goals. You got to give them credit for that. I just don't know if I just don't know if North Melbourne are really going to do anything in the next couple of years. I mean, I think they said 5 years and we'll make finals. They haven't got a lot on their side. I mean, one is Davis Uniacke, who played quite well. Bailey Scott, who was quite good off the wing. Nick Larkey's obviously going to be a star, but other than that, there's not a lot to talk about, in my opinion, for the future. Sorry, Harry Sheasel as well. And Wardlaw, who got injured, by the way, unfortunately. But yeah, there's not a lot to talk about for North Melbourne. They're gonna be struggling for a few more years. Anyway, we're not here to talk about North Melbourne's future. Anyway, the votes. 3-2-1. James Warple got the 3. Jarman Impey with the 2. And Luke Davis-Uniacke with the 1. James Warple was brilliant in this game as well. It's just been a little bit unfortunate he hasn't been able to reach those huge heights that he had a few years ago when he won the best and fairest at Hawthorn. So it's a bit unfortunate, but he was very good in this one. Brilliant in the middle. He's a strong midfielder. He's definitely going to be a star for the Hawthorn midfield in the years to come. Jarman Impey has hit some rich vein of form in the past 5 weeks off half-back. He's finally found a role for himself, and I think it's really good to see that he's that running defender. I mean, I guess it is because Jaff isn't in the lineup at the moment, but Jarman Impey, I think, just needs to play that role. He came from Port Adelaide. He was they couldn't find him a spot either. He was like a small forward for a bit, then a small defender. But he's a runner. Give him the ball, he's going to run, he's going to get you a meterage, he's going to get you the ball forward, and I think that's his role. And then Luke Davis-Uniacke, look, he was one of the few shining lights that North Melbourne had, and he was very good in this game in the middle. He tried to drag his team somewhat closer, but there's only so much he can do as a midfielder. And to be honest, if I'm another club, I'm trying to offer him the big bucks to get him out of there. If I'm North Melbourne, I'm paying him a lot of money to stay, but at this moment, he couldn't be that happy, could he? I mean, I guess he's got age on his side. He's got a lot of years left, so he can wait some time. But there's always that lure of a premiership at another club, and I don't see North Melbourne giving any sort of shake towards that in the next 5 years at least. But finally, we get to the final game of the round. Obviously, West Coast versus Richmond. West Coast, look, they didn't get flogged by 100 points, so you got to give them credit for that. Only 38, and I think that, to be honest, that's not very good for Richmond at all. That could have actually given them a real percentage booster going towards the end of the season, and they didn't take it. They kicked 14 goals, 14. They kick straighter. They very well take a really good win here, take a 60-plus point win. They only win by 38 in the end. I don't know. The Tigers, they're pushing towards finals, but I just think they've made their run a little bit too late, and I think West Coast are still in the hole. I mean, they're still losing. That's what I said against St Kilda when they lost again. They lost by a few points. And then the next week against Brisbane, they got flogged by 80. So, anyway, West Coast, they're in a hole. They're going to have to rebuild. And they almost have to cull to the point like where Hawthorn did. And maybe they will go fully, but I don't know. They still don't want to drop their senior players. They did drop Andrew Gaff down to a sub in that game. But he came on pretty early because Jinby got injured, unfortunately. So, he did play okay, Andrew Gaff. But they're too afraid to drop these big players and make a statement. So it's a bit strange, but, I'm not the West Coast coach, so who am I to tell? Anyway, 3-2-1 votes. So 3 votes went to Shea Bolton, 2 votes to Dustin Martin, and the 1 vote to Tim Taranto. Shea Bolton has hit some form. He has hit some real good form for Richmond at the moment. Playing off the midfield now, he's not playing off half forward, he's not a small forward. He's playing in a role where he can make the most impact, which is in the middle. And he should stay there for the rest of his career. He is a brilliant player in there. And he got him the win against Sydney last week. And he's helping his team, push towards this late finals push. So you got to really appreciate that if you're a Richmond fan. Dusty got the 2 votes. If he kicked straighter, he would have got the 3. He's hit some form, Dusty, and I'm a bit surprised because I thought his career was done. When I saw him at Gather Round against the Swans, I was thinking career over. I mean, he had a good career, don't get me wrong, obviously. But I think now he's definitely hitting something. I don't know what he's taken. But not saying he's taking drug. I'm not saying that. But he's definitely hit some form, Dusty, and it's good to see. I mean, I think he's one of the best players that I've seen ever play the game, probably behind Gary Ablett Jr. So, yeah, in that form that he had around 2017 to 2020, 21. I don't think I've seen many players as good as that. And it's good to see he's not hit that form, but he's definitely hit some form that's helping Richmond push towards finals. And the one about Tim Taranto, I guess some people could have given him the 3. I gave it to Shea Bolton and Dusty just before. I felt it had a little more impact. But Tim Taranto, he's had an off couple of weeks, but it's good to see him get back into a little bit of form now. And if they are to make finals to Tigers, he's going to have to hit that form as well. So that is my votes for this week, guys. Like I said, we will be doing a votes countdown at the end of the season, and who knows, maybe I'll do something stupid and give someone a medal. Maybe I'll send one of those medals out like to a club and something and see what happens. That'd be kind of funny, I think.